Hey, it's Brain Muffin back, and here we have over in the Nerd Corner. The Commodore 64 is back. We have a Commodore 64 Mini, a fun and slightly flawed time machine. It looks like it's about that big, so I'm guessing you can't hook up hard floppy drives and all that other good stuff. In the year 1986, I had gone over to spend the night at a friend's house and was amazed to see the Nintendo Entertainment System for the first time. It took us a few minutes to fall deeply in love with that little gray box. From that day forward, I did not doubt that I drove my parents as mad as I explained it was imperative that I own a Nintendo for myself. I didn't realize it came out the way that, it's kind of strange. I mean, I grew up in these times, but I didn't know anybody had a Commodore 64 and until much later, and Nintendo was like 88. I don't even know. By then, I didn't really care. As I saw a large box, obviously I had to do, it obviously had to be my Nintendo or Tornado, and there was no Nintendo, but a Commodore 64. I may not have known at the moment under the Christmas tree, but I would later grow to be incredibly grateful that my dad chose to get me the Commodore 64. It may not have had Mario, but it had much more in its life, in the span of its life. There were thousands of games released for Commodore. Some of those games were amazing, some were terrible, and some downright bizarre. Yep. Through the years, I've been quite experienced with Commodore. Okay. Enthusiasts find retro games limited would be releasing the C64 Mini in the public. And there was a thing not too long ago where someone actually reprinted boards for Commodore, and apparently there were 3 major chipset changes through the computer, and one of them had a bug, and the new board even let them. So you had to find those ROM chips off of basically a dead Commodore. It was pretty interesting. But it was $80. That's kind of expensive. So the Gordon recreation of the original Commodore ROMs are optimized to load fast and run reliably, supporting downloads for your own. Oh, cool. Pretty terrible choice. Yeah, that's been one of the things. A lot of these minis. I know that I played the Nintendo Mini not too long ago, and its control was crap. It's retro, not unlike any of the other retro consoles that have been unleashed to gamers in recent years. It runs off Linux with an ARM, yep. A custom front end, although that's kind of overkill. So it's basically running an emulator. And some of that's the problem with some of the retro consoles that do multiples is they download the ROM off the cartridge. So if there's anything that should be interacting with, like there's some add-ons and stuff like that, Game Genie, stuff like that, none of that stuff works properly. This console, we also get a joystick, which looks a bit like the myriad of joysticks are available for the Commodore. Just that this one is designed with the, okay. Rather than 1 or 2 buttons, there are 8, which allow you to, because the access menus and all that other stuff. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so thing's pretty small. I wonder, does that keyboard work, or is it just a facsimile? Miniatures version of whenever I walk around my house, I'm sitting. Let me see this. It's so perfect. They're a little odd and disorienting. Okay. First, see a little Commodore and disoriented to look at it. Yeah, because it looks like the old bread box. Although it's interesting, you can probably get a working 64 for $80 off of eBay or something. So that's just my guess. The feel, the way the console feels, as none of the keys are functional. Okay, that answers that question. Why? I mean, it's not like you can't really boot into it. I mean, you're running ROMs. I mean, does it like to get in BASIC or something? The case is so small that we would either have to and you can always plug one in through the USB port on the side. As far as the construction goes, it feels solid and well built. The slide is falling apart. That's good. The joystick offers buttons with a response that I would categorize as decent, but the stick itself feels horrible. Oh, okay, terrible. That's interesting. There's not a ton of play in it. There's not. Okay, and it feels. Okay, squishy and unsatisfying. Yeah, that's I had an Atari thing, that same kind of thing. Unfortunately, my biggest gripe about the joystick is there's no real comfort way to use it. Despite the no-slip pads on the bottom, yeah, those don't. You can never put it on a desk like that. Playing with the joystick on a table is pretty much a non-starter. The height of the stick versus the weight of the base is not enough to keep it from tipping over. Huh? Wow, that's kind of weird. I'm wondering if there's some actual circuitry in here too. I have relatively large hands, but it feels unwieldy. Okay, so here's Jumpman on the Commodore 64. The interface, Retro Game created their own front end. Yep, that's kind of typical. and unfortunately I wish there was a few more games with the menu. So I wonder if you can put them on an SD card. That's what a lot of them you can do. For if you have the actual computers, you can actually get cartridges that have the SD card on them. Load run excellently. Anyone who's familiar with the Commodore emulation is largely come to terms with slow loading times and unreliable ROMs. Is not present on the Mini. That's good. When you select a game, it loads in seconds and runs smoothly through the duration of the play. The developers did a stellar job optimizing the software in a way that gives you a retro experience with none of that vintage waiting. Now, this would be interesting. You know, the Commodore 64 was nice. That 128, if I remember correctly, also had a Z80 chip in it, so you could run CPM as well as Commodore stuff. The games are that are here are lovingly and perfectly recreated, but there's so many awesome games left out too. Yeah, well, I thought you said you could download your own ROMs. The selection of games is a bit hard to weigh in on because it's hard to find two people who have matching favorites. That's pretty true. Blast with titles like Bullet Sea and Impossible Mission. I'm assuming that there are a few more of the games in Commodore 64 Minis they're popular in Europe. Well, there's a whole host of games that I would have loved to see on system. The selection that they have offer pretty rich. Yeah, and that's been a problem with a lot of these minis, especially the ones you cannot add anything to. So final verdict, in spite of its few shortcomings, I completely love spending time with this little love letter to the world of Commodore 64 gaming. Just looking at the console brings me joy, and when I'm lying on my stomach in front of the TV playing some awesome classic games, I love it anymore. So it's a very specific market, that's for sure, and so 4 out of 5 stars. Well, there you go. There's a nice review. Who did this? This is the AndroidCentral.com, so Jazz Brown. So there he is. I guess he was playing it. Seeing these things, and that is the one of the biggest advantages to some of these newer emulated stuff, these minis, whether they're the Nintendo or the Atari or the ColecoVision or whatever, is that you can hook them up to modern televisions. Some of these widescreens, even though some of them have RCA, it depends, but some of those you had to have converter boxes and stuff like that. You can't hook, because a lot of those are hooked up to where the antenna would hook up. Not all of them have a 300 ohm connector, so you can put it into a cable connection. So being able to do these in an HDMI plug-in is very nice, and some of them are RCA because most TVs still have RCA or HDMI, and it's really cool and be able to do that. You can do that with some of the older computers, but you have to mod them quite extensively. So, well, there you go. That sounds pretty interesting. Sounds pretty neat. So if you're a Commodore 64 lover from the days gone by, maybe you can relive some of your past childhood memories. All right. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for clicking like, and thanks so much for subscribing. Goodbye.